Hey guys, it's the 3rd of November, 2023, at least when this first appears. It's Brian, it's Shelf Life, it's a new book. Today's title is The Ape in the Corner Office, Understanding the Workplace Beast in All of Us, written by Richard Conniff. I need you guys to just look at this cover real fast, because this cover turns out to be really important for how I got this book and how it impacted me once I actually got around to reading it. First thing first, this is a book from around 2005. It's a little over 300 pages long. It's a good lengthy read for sure. Richard Conniff is a writer. He specializes in nonfiction, specifically focused towards human and animal behavior, which this book is just chock full of. He's written for such places as National Geographic, Scientific American, Time. I know I heard him as a contributor for NPR at one point. So the guy's been doing this work for a while. He's got several books out there. In fact, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think I just saw he has a new one regarding epidemics. I believe the title was Ending Epidemics. I don't know if that one's good or not. I haven't read it, but it's just something I saw. So this one is from 18 years ago, and yet he is still, he's still writing today, and he's still tackling certain subjects. I said I wanted you to look at this cover because for those of you who aren't looking, other than the large font of the title, subtitle, and author's name, what you are looking at is two elements for the cover, two images. There is a monkey of some sort, a chimpanzee maybe. I'm not up on my primates, in a suit and tie. And then the only other element is a banana peel, clearly resting on what you would assume based on the way everything's been blocked on the floor. And we know what a banana peel does, especially when it's on the floor. It's slapstick. You slip, you fall. It's a monkey in a suit. It's a banana peel on the floor. It's talking about the ape in the corner office. This must be a comedy book. The person who bought it for me thought so. They bought it for me as a result of me graduating from college with a degree, one of my degrees being in business, and said, hey, here's a funny gag gift for you. And I looked at it and said, that's it. That is funny. Okay, cool. Thank you. And of course, it's a book. I'm going to read it, right? I mean, that's what you do with them. I don't just put it up on the shelf. I didn't just say, oh, it's just something funny, I'm going to ignore it. I actually sat down to read it, and I was shocked. I was completely taken aback by what it was that I was reading. I expected just tongue-in-cheek all throughout. But it actually was a pretty serious book on the subject of comparing human behavior, how we act with each other in society in general, but a tightening of the focus to in the workplace. Comparing that to animal behavior, how we see, especially primates, but not only, how we see them interacting with each other socially and looking for common elements where things cross over between them. There's a ton of discussion about how hierarchy works. I remember gorillas being compared to how they handle who's the boss in charge of a pack of gorillas, and the others who could be leaders themselves. What do? Do they go out on their own and try and strike up their own group, or are they hangers-on looking for when they can kind of take the lead from the big gorilla itself? There's some stories in here about how important contact can be to humans with each other. Physical contact, just audible contact, keeping in touch with people, and how studies have shown what happens to us. Speaking of the epidemic, a lot of us dealt with some real severe issues being separated by each other in ways that we hadn't ever been before for the length of time that we had been, and how studies in animals have shown exactly those same impacts. So for people who study this kind of thing, that's not a surprise. I think this also may have been the first introduction to me when I got around to actually reading this. I think it was the first introduction to me of an explanation of how expressions and microexpressions work. I could be confusing it. I do have a book from Dr. Paul Ekman about microexpressions, so there's a good chance that I'm kind of conflating the two here, but I do know expressions, body language, definitely covered in this as well. And it was something that, again, I thought it was just gonna be a joke. I didn't actually expect the serious book that I got out of this. And I enjoyed it enough that it is a twice read book, actually 2.5 to be fair. There was one time I tried reading it again, but I realized, you know what? I've already done this twice. I know where all this is going. I remember this. Let's move on. One of the funny things is, when I did actually start working in an office, I couldn't help but from time to time think of the things that I had seen or thought about as a result of this book. It has actually impacted the way that I treat people, whether I'm the subordinate and they're in charge of me, or in the situations where I'm the person in charge and I'm talking with my subordinates. I actually found myself thinking in advance how I don't want to do certain things that we all do, and that when you're in that subordinate role, you really can't stand it. Was it successful or not? I don't know. I got good feedback about it, but I don't know. I don't know that I can really trust that there's a good enough sample size to tell me yay or nay on that end. This book is pretty well received. There are some criticisms of them, but not too much. I will point out that there is humor in this book. This book is funny, but it's a very specific type of humor. I want to use the word sly, where you'll read a sentence and it will still be on the topic and it fits perfectly in its paragraph. But if you run it through your head a second time right away, you get one of those, I see what you did there kind of things. There's a lot of that throughout the book, and I found it very humorous, but it is slightly more on the subtle side, where I think a lot of people felt this book needed to be funnier or not as funny. So it's one of those middle ground positions where damned if you do, damned if you don't. One of the most common criticisms I saw when I was looking at reviews from people who had read this, I do understand. And there is a lot, when talking about humans, there is a lot of coverage of mega powerful CEOs. If you pay attention to business news or political news that has a business angle to it, you're going to see names that you recognize. They won't necessarily be tied to the company you think of them with, because, you know, this was back in 2005, but there are names you'll go, oh yeah, I know that person. And he describes some of the things they've done negatively because they were negative things. I believe, for example, one story in there about a CEO or some sort of manager walking around with a bat in his hand. You know, like, it's obviously a problem. And he never endorses the behavior of these CEOs, but I saw a lot of people saying maybe too much attention was paid to the CEOs, which led to two possible valid criticisms. One is, if you focus on them so much, at what point do you cross the line into endorsing their behavior, even though he didn't ever come out and endorse that behavior? I think that's valid. Another one is the people in those positions of power. When you're talking about power dynamics, of course you're going to think of them, but I think maybe if there was less of a focus on them and a lot more stories about your bread and butter, day-to-day steak and potato. I don't know why my blank and blanks are mostly food related. I had breakfast. I'm not hungry, so I'm not sure what's happening. But if you focus more on your regular everyday person, your regular everyday worker, that maybe it would be easier to relate to. I'm certainly never going to consider walking around with a baseball bat at the office, unless, of course, it's Halloween and I'm dressing up as the baseball gang from, what is the movie? I can't remember, the Can You Dig It movie. The Warriors, that's what it is. That's the only time I would do that. There is something funny to me, though, about a lack of a certain criticism. I vaguely recall Richard Conniff in this book points out you might be uncomfortable having you in other humans compared to animals. Some people do not like that. And it's a good point. There's a lot of people who really don't like that. Yet, I guess those people just didn't read this book because I didn't see anybody say, it's all right, but, we're not fish. We're not chimps. We're not, this or that. I didn't find a whole lot of that. So either they weren't reading this book, or they weren't reviewing this book, or they didn't notice, or they didn't read the book. I enjoyed it, which is why I'm sharing it with you. I think it's actually maybe a worthwhile gift, though aged, for people who are trying to get into a business administrative role. There might be some newer books that cover this topic with some updated research, more things that have been learned. But this is an old enough book. You can get it pretty cheap. It's like $5 for the Kindle version, $10 or so for the hardcover. I say go for it. It's a good read. You can at least enjoy it, learn some things, and actually look at all animals, not just humans, a little differently. That's all I've got for you on this one, guys. I hope you have a fantastic whatever day you're going through after watching this and listening to this. And I will see you in another month with another book. Bye.